Okay, everybody remember what you said.
Previously on the Bible, we talked about the rest of chapter 19, and now we're going to move into chapter 20. You didn't miss much. Thank you, Susan. I'm going to read chapter 20 from Robert Alter's translation, which will be a little funky. Here we go. And David fled from Naioth, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, in Ramah, and came and said before Jonathan, what have I done? What is my crime, and what my offense before your father should he seek my life? And he said to him, heaven forbid you shall not die. Look, my father will do nothing, whether great or small, without revealing it to me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It cannot be. And David swore again and said, your father surely knows that I have found favor in your eyes, and he will think, let not Jonathan know this, lest he be pained. And indeed, as the Lord lives, and as you live, there is but a step between me and death. And Jonathan said, whatever you desire, I shall do for you. And David said to Jonathan, look, it is the new moon tomorrow, and I am supposed to sit with the king to eat. Let me go, and I shall hide in the field till the evening of the day after tomorrow. Should your father, in fact, mark my absence, you shall say, David has urgently asked of me that he run to Bethlehem his town, for the seasonal sacrifice is to take place there for the whole clan. If thus he says, good, it is well with your servant. But if in fact he is incensed, know that the evil has been resolved by him. And you shall keep faith with your servant. For into a pact of the Lord you have brought your servant with you. And if there be any crime in me, put me to death yourself, for why should you bring me to your father? And Jonathan said, heaven forbid you say it. If in fact I learn that the evil has been resolved by my father, would I not tell it to you? And David said to Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers you harshly? And Jonathan said, come, let us go out to the field. And the two of them went out to the field. And Jonathan said to David, witness the Lord God of Israel, that I will sound out my father at this hour tomorrow or the day after, and whether he is well disposed to David or not, I will send to you and reveal to you. Thus may the Lord do to Jonathan, and even more, if it seems good to my father to bring the evil upon you. I will reveal it to you, and I will send you off, and you shall go safely, and the Lord shall be with you as he was with my father. Would that while I am still alive, you may keep the Lord's faith with me, that I not die, and that you not cut off your faithfulness from my house for all time, not even when the Lord cuts off all David's enemies from the face of the earth. For Jonathan has sealed a pact with the house of David, and the Lord shall requite it from the hand of David. And Jonathan once again swore to David in his love for him, for he loved him as he loved himself. And Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is the new moon, and your absence will be marked, because your place will be vacant. The day after tomorrow you will go all the way down and come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and stay by as the Ezel stone. As for me, I shall shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I were aiming at a target. And look, I shall send the lad, go find the arrows. If I expressly say to the lad, look, the arrows are on this side of you, fetch them. Come, for it will be well with you, and nothing will be the matter, as the Lord lives. But if thus I say to the youth, look, the arrows are on the far side of you, go, for the Lord will have sent you away. And as for the matter of which you and I have spoken, look, the Lord is witness between you and me for all time. I'm going to pause there. It's kind of a natural division in the text. If you had to sum it up, maybe one word, what kind of just happened there? What did they do in the field? They made a covenant.
Yes, they did.
As tends to happen in the Old Testament. Yeah. And I think now, if you did not know that there is some potential gay themes going on here, it's probably now you can't see anything but that, because it's just so stark. The mentioning of how they love each other and how they care after each other is pretty special. And the fact that they're going off to a field to have this kind of deep conversation, right? Yeah.
Why couldn't they have continued their conversation wherever they went?
Yes,
Hey, yeah,
exactly, right, yeah. Yeah, if it was made today, it would play out probably like Brokeback Mountain or
Yeah.
Call Me by Your Name, and
Mhm.
be some consummation out there.
What's the deal with the new moon? Was that a festival that happened every month? That's the first reference I've ever
Yeah.
heard that makes it
Yeah, I
sound
don't
like there's a
know.
gathering of the tribes and
Sounds
all that
like
kind of
it.
thing.
Well, there's a lot of lore, I guess is the word in here, with the arrows and everything. I mean, it's basically versions of casting lots or rolling dice. They were flipping a coin, you know. But they're putting their trust in what we would call luck or fortune, but you know, they again attribute that to God. How it's tied up with the new moon festival, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it makes sense that they would probably, when the moon is full, that they would have well, that's not a new moon. The new moon is the reverse, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
where it's it's completely
Either completely,
Yeah.
or it's just the tiniest.
right,
sliver,
right. Little corona. Yeah.
Mhm.
What else do you think? Peculiar. I know it's a strange translation too. I'm looking at some of my notes in here. Quite strikingly, chapter 20, these are David's first reported words to Jonathan, though Jonathan's devotion to David and one speech to David in 19 have been duly recorded. It's noteworthy that this is not a personal communication to Jonathan, but kind of a political statement, a protestation of innocence cast in patently rhetorical language. What have I done? What is my crime? David speaks to Jonathan less as an intimate friend than a courtier, or courtier, yeah. Later in the dialogue, even invoking the differential self-reference of your servant. So there's a contrast to the often read romantic relationship. Oh, and Greg walked out, and here's my note on the new moon. In early biblical times, this was an important festival. Sacrifices were offered, ceremonial feasts were held, and ordinary business was not transacted. Okay.
I found verse 2 kind of interesting too, where Jonathan thinks his father wouldn't do anything without telling him.
Yeah.
And it seems like his father's done a lot without telling him.
Yeah, there is something about, there's a hint that Jonathan's a bit naive, especially
Right.
with respect to his father.
Right. It's like, it's like his father's an open book to him, and it's like,
Right.
it doesn't read
No,
that
yeah.
way.
Yeah, it's a dramatic irony because we know Saul is losing his mind
Mhm.
in the previous chapter. So Jonathan is not aware.
Right.
Let me see.
In talking about Saul losing his mind, sometimes because of what they were drinking from, the clayware, that there was a lead problem, which eventually affected their minds.
That's great. Did you learn that in EFM?
No, that came somewhere along one of my college courses or Sunday school courses.
That's amazing.
Or even nursing, that, there's a problem when they drink continuously out of those containers.
Yeah, I love that. That's
They also
great.
say that this is not biblical, but that the Salem witch trial
Oh, yeah.
started because the flour that they were making their bread had gone to a mold that caused psychotic behavior.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of physical medical reasons why someone could be crazy. And again, they would attribute it to the Lord.
Just look at today, things that happen
Sure.
that we don't know about.
Greg, when you stepped out, I found a footnote that said the new moon in early biblical times, this was an important festival. Sacrifices were offered, ceremonial feasts were held, and ordinary business was not transacted.
Okay.
So they did that 12 times a year.
Yeah, I guess so. Any excuse for a
Their
party.
calendar was different
Yeah.
than ours. To us, 12 times a
Excuse
year.
for both a party and an opportunity to please God, burn something nice smelling to him. Another note here again, Jonathan unaware that Saul has tried to kill David and still believes his father would not act without first consulting him. Another translation in verse 3 of I have favor in your eyes is simply you like me. You like me, you really like me. Okay, shall we press on? Would someone like to read a different translation starting at verse 24, I think, to the end of the chapter?
I thought it was 18, or maybe not.
Oh, you can, it's 24.
Okay,
You got it, Leslie?
yeah, you want, okay, 24.
Oh, yours.
All right. So David hid himself in the field. When the new moon came and the king sat at the feast to eat, the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, upon the seat by the wall. Jonathan stood, while Abner sat by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Saul did not say anything that day, for he thought, something has befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean. But on the second day, the day after the new moon, David's place was empty. And Saul said to his son Jonathan, why has the son of Jesse not come to the feast, either yesterday or today? Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. He said, let me go, for our family is holding a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. So now, if I have found favor in your sight, let me get away and see my brothers. For this reason, he has not come to the king's table. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan. He said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives upon the earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Now send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. Then Jonathan answered his father Saul, why should he be put to death? What has he done? But Saul threw his spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan knew that it was the decision of his father to put David to death. Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger and ate no food on the second day of the month. For he is grieved for David and because his father had disgraced him. In the morning, Jonathan went out into the field to the appointment with David. And with him was a little boy. He said to the boy, run and find the arrows that I shoot. As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called after the boy and said, is the arrow not beyond you? Jonathan called after the boy, hurry, be quick, do not linger. So Jonathan's boy gathered up the arrows and came to his master. But the boy knew nothing. Only Jonathan and David knew the arrangement. Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said to him, go and carry them to the city. As soon as the boy had gone, David rose from beside the stone heap and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept with each other. David wept the more. Then Jonathan said to David, go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall be between you, me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. He got up and left, and Jonathan went into the city.
Wow. Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Now, what do you think? Drama's getting ratcheted up for sure.
Yeah.
Now, again, we're gonna resist putting a 21st century read on this, but at the same time, they're prostrating themselves in the field, they're crying, they're being openly emotional. The kissing is not unusual for back then, but in the context of everything we read, it definitely sticks out a little bit, and all to underscore just the deep relationship between the two of them. But now they're both kind of sharing this estrangement from Saul.
I'm missing what the significance of shooting all these arrows is.
I think it's like a
Wasn't this
decoy, kind of like a signal that
Mhm.
for David to come out
Oh, okay.
and get the boy out of there, because David's out there hiding.
Is Abner anybody?
Abner is somebody, but I can't tell you off the top of my head who he is. Where was he mentioned?
Right.
Sitting next to
Sitting next.
Saul.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
Abner sat
sitting
by
next-
Saul's
yeah.
side.
He must have been some kind
I
of. a
think he was
counselor
mentioned.
or-
Yeah,
or-
but Jonathan's standing and Abner's sitting next to.
Maybe he was.
David has an
You know, my translation didn't say that Jonathan was standing.
So
He's like
just,
Saul's main lieutenant. He's, I think he's commander in the field. Yeah, he's been mentioned before as Saul's number 2 guy.
Got it.
I think Abner was the one that was with him when, I think he was the one who was with him when, David slew Goliath and they were trying to figure out supposedly.
Oh, yes.
Goliath
Yep.
was before, and he was also there with, when David was planting for Saul. Abner was there, so why they didn't know who he was then, and Abner had to ask, we don't know. But anyway, he's been there several points. Yeah.
Yeah.
you, thank you.
That very last verse
Mhm.
that Leslie read was slightly different than what mine says.
Uh-huh.
Mine says, the Lord shall be between you and me and between your posterity and mine forever. And I think hers mentions specifically offspring or something like that.
Mhm. Feed,
Mine
yeah.
does
So
too.
is that saying that their covenant included that in the future they would accept each other's children and whatnot as their own family?
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
I mean, that's certainly a fair read on it. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And again, Susan, go ahead. Might have a
Yeah,
response.
in the message, it says, God will be the bond between me and you and between my children and your children forever.
Wow.
That's,
Now, again, I'm coming at it full-throatedly from a queer theology point of view, but
Mhm.
I mean, this is not unlike the covenant now has kind of become a marriage covenant in some way. They've let God into the relationship.
Mhm.
And there's kind of a bond there that's been blessed by God in many ways. And I think there's something telling about that. Yeah. That it links up their offspring is just one of those tantalizing things that the text isn't gonna dwell on, but just leaves you kind of going like, this is more than a normal relationship between two men. Yeah.
Jonathan's sister, Michal,
Michal.
aware of all this?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I mean, it's very likely, especially from future stories, if you take them at face value, that David is more like bisexual. And so
Right.
therefore she might not have a
Right.
clue.
Because he lust after Bathsheba.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
David,
David,
just-
yeah, David liked women as well. That's for sure.
David
He's
definitely liked women as well.
Bisexual, yeah.
and again, it's very similar to our discussions in the Sunday morning adult forum, but David could probably pass for straight.
Mhm.
And whereas Jonathan probably couldn't, since his father
Right.
continues to dig. He calls him the son of a perverse woman. There's a mention of the mother's nakedness, which is absolutely, according to my footnotes, a euphemism for her genitals. So the father, Saul, basically saying, there's something wrong with you, and it's your mother's fault. I have nothing to do with it.
so do you think that it's totally the fact that he's realizing that Jonathan's more homosexual tendencies, or that he's betraying him?
I think all of the above.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like, it's you're my kid, why are you betraying
Right.
me?
Right, exactly. And here he's actively trying to kill him,
Mm.
I mean, it's just how far gone Saul is.
And this is the first time that Saul actually tried to kill his son, right? This
Mhm.
throwing him the spear
Mhm.
in front of all the elders and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Just flipping back through.
Wouldn't you think that some of these upper echelon people would,
Like Abner.
yeah, exactly.
Would be like, dude, calm down.
Well, yeah, because he's trying to kill the future king,
Yeah.
for one thing. It just, and not only that, but Jonathan was a warrior and he.
Sure.
He got rid of a lot of Philistines also, so at least the military people must have held Jonathan in high esteem. So no reaction
Because they
against
fought with
Saul.
them, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's
Well-
go ahead, David.
I think we can see analogies right now, well, at least previously in the previous generation, to people not standing up against evil when the guy in power says something against them. I think sometimes it's not considered a safe thing to do. Sometimes it's not good for your career. You don't try to rein in the nutty king when he's when he's going off on one of these tangents. It's not good for your career.
Right.
I think
Well,
you're right.
It's true.
A lot of medieval
And they are kind of.
historical novel stuff and the soldiers would be the king would be their liege lord, so whatever he said goes, so if he said, I'm killing my kid, they'd say, okay, Lord, whatever you say.
Well, right, and there's it's military, there's a hierarchy, and you know, why would they question the king? And also, why would they go out on a limb for Jonathan, who they probably trust and fought with, but also know, you know, probably uncomfortable with his sexuality or his being, you know?
Right. Well, and you know, the fact that Saul was God's anointed, so to speak,
Yeah.
would make
Still there,
would make
even though
people
now it's not
question their own, you know,
illegal,
I
so to
accepted the
speak,
fact
but
that Saul
it's
was
still
God's
there.
anointed, so I've gotta put up with him, or I've gotta think somehow God is working through him or whatever,
Yeah,
you know, rather than starting to think mutinous thoughts.
exactly, yeah.
Well, Barb and I were talking on the side over here.
Mhm.
This is very similar to what we see going on today. I mean, military always had a problem with gays. Supposedly it's not a problem today, but you know, it still is. It's just they can be accepted, but
Right.
that doesn't mean their comrades are accepting them.
Mhm.
And then if we look what's happening on our political side,
Mhm.
you're seeing people disaligning themselves with the quote unquote
Right.
Bad kid.
appointed king.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
So,
It's-
I mean, it really
it's
aligns
cyclical.
with what we're
Yeah,
seeing
It's
in
cyclical.
society today.
It's true.
I would like to say what Greg said. I would like to, give them the credit to say that maybe they were thinking he was God's anointed, but I tend to think that they were more pragmatic than that. That might have been an excuse they said, but I think they were mostly looking out for number one.
Yeah.
And if they're really ambitious, they were thinking, well, if the son of the king is gone and I'm the king's right-hand guy, that just puts me closer to the top.
And I'm in a good spot. Yeah.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
want to jeopardize that. You know, the Game of Thrones show, books, the
Mhm.
spin-off series, they have an interesting character, and you know, so much of that belongs to medieval history, and it's like an interpretation of that, British kings and things, and scripture. And you know, what Saul probably has around him is what Game of Thrones would call the hand of the king, which is a man who is, it could be a woman, basically a person that's like the advisor that stands with them. You know, he's kind of missing that now. You would have the hand of the king in Game of Thrones go, my lord, probably not
Mhm.
a good time to throw a spear at your son in front of everybody, right? So, you know, calm down. But there's nobody here. There's no checks and balances on Saul, right?
Mhm.
That's what he's missing.
Samuel's not there to say something.
Samuel's not there.
Would have said something, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we got time to do chapter 21, and it's a short chapter. Would anyone like to read maybe the whole thing?
The heading on mine in the message for 21 is David pretends to go crazy.
There we go. Just to be clear, David is not actually crazy like Saul. I'll read from, what were you gonna say? You're gonna read? Okay. NRSV, I'll read from that version. Okay, I'll just shut up. No, I'm just kidding. I know. David came to Nob to the priest Ahimelech. Ahimelech came trembling to meet David and said to him, "Why are you alone and no one with you?" David said to the priest Ahimelech, "The king has charged me with a matter and said to me, 'No one must know anything of the matter about which I send you and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place. Now then, what have you at hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever is here." The priest answered David, "I have no ordinary bread at hand, only holy bread, provided that the young men have kept themselves from women." David answered the priest, "Indeed, women have been kept from us as always when I go on an expedition. The vessels of the young men are holy even when it is a common journey. how much more today will their vessels be holy? So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there except the bread of the presence, which is removed from before the Lord to be replaced by hot bread on the day it is taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. David said to Ahimelech, "Is there no spear or sword here with you? I did not bring my sword or my weapons with me because the king's business required haste." The priest said, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take that, take it, for there is none here except that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." David rose and fled that day from Saul. He went to King Achish of Gath. The servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing to one another of him in dances? Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s." David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of King Achish of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them. He pretended to be mad when in their presence. He scratched marks on the doors of the gate and let his spittle run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look, you see the man is mad. Why then have you brought him to me? Do I lack madmen that you have brought me this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?" Let me just read into chapter 22 a little bit, kind of get to an end here. David left there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and all of his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. Everyone who was in distress and everyone who was in debt and everyone who was discontented gathered to him, and he became captain over them. Those who were with him numbered about 400. That seems like a more logical ending there. But yeah, what a great line to do. Am I having a shortage of madmen that you thought it was appropriate to act like a crazy person? Poor King Achish doesn't know what he's gotten into. I wanted to look at the line on verse 11 that refers to David as king, and I wonder if there's a text problem there. Yep, verse 11. If this is not an anachronism, indicates that the Philistines already recognized David as a ruler. The Philistines quote the song from chapter 18, verse 7. Saul has killed his thousands, David his 10,000. So remember, the Philistines were, led by Goliath. David killed Goliath. Philistines ran away, all lived happily ever after, so to speak. And the Philistines, being less schooled, maybe a little more rural, their assumption, which is probably, again, Saul is consumed by this, is the optics. Well, if David killed Goliath, David must be in charge, which is another threat to Saul's supremacy. So they are some of them are referring to David as the king, almost euphemistically, because they just assume he's a man of great importance. They just don't know that Saul's been actively trying to kill him and thwart him along the way.
Those Philistines were persistent though, because after David killed Goliath, they come back
Yes,
again and again.
Yeah.
They weren't giving up.
they won't go
easily.
away, will they?
No.
And it continues that this is Israel's story, and they are mocking the Philistines whenever they get the chance. The idea that the Philistines can't tell the difference between a real mad person and someone who's faking it is another insult to their intelligence.
So this Achish, king of Gath, he was Philistine actually?
Philistine, yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
It's a Philistine,
Yeah, that's good, Greg. This is foreshadowing. We're going to see later that David serves as a mercenary for the Philistines. It's kind of interesting that when David runs away, he allies with the enemies of Saul and with the enemies of the Hebrew. It maybe shows us that some of David's motives might not been in actuality quite as pure as you might think. But
Yeah. This is not a very black and white story. Even with Saul, there was things that started off good. The arc, unfortunately, is just arcing in the wrong direction. But David is no saint, not one bit. Yeah.
Was
Would you
David
clarify?
allowing him?
Oh, go ahead, Mary. Sorry.
I was
Greg.
just, maybe I got a little lost there. Can you please clarify who this Gath's king I mean, who Ashes is, Ashes.
Oh, yeah, he's a king of the Philistines, one of their kings. And
Okay.
the Philistines who Goliath was a member of. They're kind of like the nomad tribe that Israel considers their worst enemy right at this time. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And you might have missed a few, Mary, where we talked about
Yeah.
the Philistines are often mocked and ridiculed more than they are feared, and just to try to kind of add insult to injury. So they will at one point in the story, the Hebrews made gold paintings of them with having hemorrhoids, and then they always. So there's just they're try to do all of these things to just in the storytelling to knock them down a few levels because they were so powerful.
Afraid of David, and I mean, isn't he the one that circumcised thousands of them?
Yeah. Well, I think they do have a
100, he did 200.
right, exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so that song, Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000. You know, imagine they made a song about it as is an insult to Saul.
Yeah.
So everyone's insulting each other. You know, it's going like Saul killed a lot of people, but David killed twice as many. La la la. You know, a little bit of this kind of sword in the stone talk with the actual weapon you used to kill Goliath that the priest has been holding on to. David says, "There is none like it. Give it to me." So this little myth making kind of creeps in here too.
What's the point of talking about Doeg being there? Because in my Bible,
Or
it
Doug.
says,
Yeah.
Looks like Doug,
you said that your Bible said he was Saul's,
the chief of Saul's shepherds.
yeah, and this one says he's Saul's chief henchman.
Henchman.
Yeah.
Oh.
So kind of like an Abner, you know, he's like his body man, you know, guy that goes off. It's like his Michael Cohen
He's one of the
Secret Service guy.
before he flipped. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, what I was gonna ask, since David, you brought up this kind of foreshadowing. Did King David, I mean, he wasn't king yet, but did David go over to the Philistine side in the hopes of unseating Saul and then going back and taking his rightful place? I mean, because obviously this was while Saul was still alive and before David was king, correct? And then I'm wondering, how did the Hebrews welcome David back with open arms after David had gone and, you know, become a mercenary to fight against them? I guess it'll all be resolved in future meetings.
I
not.
think that David, it just shows us that David is always looking for the main chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's looking out to protect himself, and he's looking out to further his chances, and he uses whatever kind of tool or person or whatever that's available. You may even look kind of askance at his relationship with Jonathan in this way, but the whole thing was David was looking after David. But they kind of downplay this because David is the hero of 1 Samuel, but he was hardly a naive, innocent little shepherd boy. David was kind of like his brother said. He was always looking out for himself. So yeah. So he.
And I like that again. You know, if this was dramatically told in a movie, which could be a really good movie,
Yes,
just
it
David
would.
and Jonathan's story or something, just this section of David's life would be really interesting. But you could easily see behind the scenes the drama where Jonathan maybe represents a life of, oddly enough, normalcy, and you know, another almost like an alternate pathway for David could have chosen, where I almost want to see a scene that's missing here with them in the fields hugging or crying and Jonathan being like, let's just run away, you know, let's just get on a boat and get out of here and live together and you know, raise children and you know,
Land of none.
yeah, but David's ambition and his and you know, and that kind of sense of call to this is in conflict with it.
That's an
No, he's not.
interesting point. That's really interesting, Greg.
That's a mid-rush. It's a mid-rush.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. But you're right. David is destined in some way, fated to be king, even with his scruples. But the Bible has, up until this point, really taken keen liking to the tricksters and the people who take some of the situation into their own hands. There's an affection for David, even when he's gonna make some slip ups or kind of give in to this behavior.
I have one. Can I ask
yeah.
one question? I was noticing that the one thing we kind of passed over, which was at the beginning of towards the beginning of the chapter, is when he gets the holy bread and gets to be given that. And that was something that, only the priests were allowed to have, not any normal person who walked in there.
Mhm.
And I just thought that was interesting because,
Well,
and
that
that
you talked about
that wasn't an acceptable place to go get your food.
Right.
Jesus references that in the Gospels. When he's challenged on breaking the Sabbath, he, in the three synoptics point out that Jesus uses this as an example of sometimes there are rules about the Sabbath that are subordinate to the needs of people. Yeah,
Exactly.
I think the phrase was that the Sabbath is for the people, not the people to serve the Sabbath.
Right.
yeah, man, Sabbath
Or
is
vice
made for
versa.
man, not man
Yeah.
for the Sabbath. Yeah, exactly, Susan. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Hmm.
It's funny. I saw it as a scene of somebody coming into the church on Sunday going, "I'm so hungry. Do you have any bread to eat?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but not that bread." All right, get some wafers. Any other thoughts or comments on any of this? Lauren, I wanted to give you a chance if you had anything to say. Or
I've
comment.
just enjoyed listening, catching up. I'm not super familiar with Samuel, so I'm just trying
all
to
right.
get back into the story. I will say that in my Bible, sometimes I have things underlined and I don't know when I did it or why I did it. And something that
Ooh.
I underlined in chapter 22 is, and everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him. And so I'm guessing at some point I received some sort of sermon about David, or about Jesus being the new David.
Yeah.
So that sentence stuck out to me.
That's a great observation. Absolutely. Because it's again, there's a conflict in the text about how they feel about David. Mostly the conflict is we love David, but here you're getting a take on him that is a little bit Christ-like, very messianic. He's taking on everyone's sins and debts and all that. It's very, very much a foreshadow. Absolutely. Or we should say the other way to say that is the Christian story is an echo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great point. Minus the sentence, those who were with him numbered about 400. That's not usually one you find on a quilt or stitched on a cross stitch. It's just somebody wanted to get in that line to just get some of the details in to give it some authenticity. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. We'll rejoin next week, the last one before Christmas, and then we're off for the week after Christmas. So I'll see you next Wednesday. Well, hopefully I'll see you this weekend.
Yep.
I don't know if I'll be here or not, because Stephen will be here this next.
Oh, okay. We'll bring him along. If you've not been, those of you who are new in our midst, the 10:30 service, which will be live streamed, is the in place of me blabbering on and the creed and the prayers and all that, we have the whole Christmas pageant. It takes up the first half of the service. And Charity said we're looking at something around 20 kids, 75% of which want to play angels.
Angels.
So it's going to be an angel heavy.
They're wanting to get in.
Yeah,
They
and
want to be on the nice list, not.
we're very much, we don't, as you can tell, we don't want to, we want to create some structure for the kids, but we also don't want to force them to do things they really don't want to do. And a lot of them do not want to take leading starring roles, which is so different from my upbringing where we were all trying to kill each other for the roles. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, they want to be seen and not heard. They want to dress up.
Yeah.
So there you go. So it'll be fun. I don't know if Louise is going to be a part of it, but she'll certainly be enjoying it.
Yes, Charity emailed me and asked if Louise would be interested in being the Christmas star.
Oh, great.
Essentially, yeah.
It's a big role.
Big role for her, yeah.
A big role. There's people get lost if without that star. So there you go. Awesome. Well, hope to see you all this weekend then. Take care. And we'll fix the
Bye.
Zoom link for next time. I'll try it.
Bye.
So what's, that was, much you gotta be.
I think she has to be in the